In this village, children were dying because the king used all the water to keep his daughter alive. But if she ever touched the ground, she would disappear forever. This is the story of the girl made of rain. The sun beat down on the village of Tola like a giant, angry eye. It was so hot that the dirt baked hard and cracked into shapes like broken plates. In Tola, there was a rule that everyone knew. It was the most important rule in the whole kingdom, and nobody dared to break it. Princess Adora was never ever allowed to touch the ground. If she went outside, the royal guards rolled out thick heavy carpets made of bright red and gold threads. If the carpets were not enough, 4 giant men carried her in a wooden chair that floated high above the dusty roads. Even inside the giant stone palace, her bare feet never touched the floor. She wore thick wooden shoes, and servants placed soft animal skins wherever she wanted to step. The villagers watched her pass by whispering behind their hands. Why was she treated like a fragile bird? Why did the king look so terrified every time she stepped close to the edge of her carpet? The king, a large man named Jengo, had issued a harsh warning to everyone in the land. If any person let the princess touch the bare earth, that person would be thrown into the deep dark dungeon forever. Nobody knew the real reason behind the strange rule. Some people said she was cursed by a wicked witch. Others said her feet were made of pure gold, and the dirt would ruin them. But the truth was far more terrifying than anyone could imagine, and the secret was slowly destroying the village of Tola. A young boy named Kobe lived at the very edge of Tola. Kobe was only 8 years old, but he worked harder than a grown man. He had big bright eyes and hands that were rough from digging in the dry earth. Kobe lived with his little sister Nala. Nala was small and sweet, but she was always hungry. Their parents had passed away when a great sickness swept through the village, leaving Kobe to take care of his sister all by himself. Every day, Kobe and Nala sat by the side of the road and watched the royal parade go by. They saw the beautiful Princess Adora sitting high up in her wooden chair. She wore dresses made of shining blue silk, and her hair was braided with sparkling beads. But Kobe noticed something that the other villagers did not. When Adora looked down at the people, she did not smile. Her eyes looked sad like a bird trapped in a beautiful golden cage. Nala would pull on Kobe's shirt and ask, "Why can't the princess run and play in the dirt with us?" Kobe would just shake his head. He did not have an answer. He only knew that while the princess floated above them on soft cushions, his little sister's stomach grumbled with hunger, and their throats burned with a terrible thirst. The difference between the palace and the village was starting to feel very wrong. The village of Tola was slowly dying. For many months, not a single drop of rain had fallen from the sky. The big river that used to run through the middle of the village was now just a deep ditch of dry white sand. The green plants had turned brown and crumbled into dust. The cows and goats grew thin, and they cried out all night because they had no water to drink. The mothers in the village tried to squeeze drops of dirty water from mud puddles to give to their babies, but soon even the mud puddles dried up. The air was thick with dust, making it hard to breathe. The people were desperate. They needed water to survive. Yet up on the high hill, King Jengo's palace remained beautiful and grand. The king had a secret deep well inside the palace walls that never dried up, but he locked the heavy iron gates and kept all the water for himself, his guards, and his daughter. The villagers did not understand how a king could watch his people suffer so much. Why did he care more about keeping dust off his daughter's feet than keeping his people alive? Kobe watched the dry wind blow the dust around his tiny hut. He held his little sister close, feeling her warm, dry forehead. He knew he had to do something or his sister would not survive the terrible heat. Kobe decided he had to find a way inside the palace. He heard that the head cook, an old woman named Binta, needed help cleaning the large cooking pots. Kobe walked up the steep stone path to the grand palace gates. He told the giant guards that he was strong and could work very hard. The guards laughed at the small boy, but old Binta came out and saw the determination in Kobe's eyes. She let him in. Kobe's new job was to scrub the giant black cooking pots and to wash the special soft animal skins that Princess Adora used to walk on. He had to wash them in a small tub of water and lay them out in the sun to dry perfectly. The palace was huge and full of strange smells like roasted meat and sweet flowers. For Kobe, it felt like a completely different world. He was given a small bowl of leftover rice every day, which he secretly hid in his pocket to take home to his sister. Working in the palace meant he could finally see how the king and the princess lived. He saw the guards constantly watching the ground, sweeping away every single piece of dirt or sharp stone from the hallways. The fear in the palace was thick. Everyone was terrified of making a mistake. One afternoon, Kobe was carrying a stack of soft, clean animal skins across the royal courtyard. The courtyard was made of smooth white stones, but there were patches of bare earth where flowers used to grow. Princess Adora was sitting on a large wooden bench surrounded by guards and her servants. She was looking at a small, colorful bird in a cage. Kobe stopped for a moment to watch her. Up close, she was even more beautiful, but her sadness was even more clear. She looked at the bare earth with a look of deep longing, as if she wanted to jump down and feel the dirt between her toes. Just then, one of the older servants, a man whose hands were shaking with age, was rolling out a new carpet for her to walk on. His foot slipped on a loose stone, and the heavy carpet tumbled from his hand and rolled away, leaving a large gap of bare brown dirt right in front of the princess. The courtyard went completely silent, nobody breathed. Princess Adora stood up, her eyes wide. For a split second, she moved her foot toward the bare dirt. The tension in the air was thick. You could cut it with a knife. Before Adora's foot could touch the dirt, King Jengo burst into the courtyard. His face was red with pure rage. "Stop," he roared, his voice echoing like loud thunder against the stone walls. He ran forward and grabbed his daughter by the arm, pulling her back so hard she almost fell. The king then turned to the old servant who had dropped the carpet. The king's eyes were wild and filled with a dark terror. He ordered his guards to drag the old man away to the deep dungeons immediately. The old man cried and begged for mercy, but the king did not listen. "If she touches the earth, we are all doomed," the king shouted at the remaining servants. Kobe watched from behind a large stone pillar, his heart hammering in his chest. Why was the king so terrified? It was just dirt. Every child in Tola played in the dirt, but the king looked as if the old servant had almost dropped the princess into a pit of poisonous snakes. After the guards dragged the crying man away, the king picked Adora up in his own arms and carried her back to her high tower, locking the doors behind them. Kobe knew then that this was not just a strange royal rule. This was a matter of life and death. The next morning, Kobe was sent to clean the tall windows outside the princess's room. He stood on a high wooden ladder, rubbing the glass with a wet cloth. Suddenly, the window pushed open and Princess Adora looked out. She saw Kobe and did not call for the guards. Instead, she leaned closer. "You are from the village below, aren't you?" she asked. Her voice was soft like the sound of a gentle breeze. Kobe nodded slowly, afraid to speak. "Tell me," she whispered, looking down at the ground far below. "What does the earth feel like? Is it warm? Is it soft?" Kobe was shocked. An 8-year-old girl who had never felt the ground. "It is hard and dry right now, princess," Kobe answered quietly, "because there is no rain. But when it is wet, it squishes between your toes and it smells alive." Adora closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to imagine it. "My father says the earth is dangerous. He says it is full of sharp teeth that will bite my feet." Kobe frowned. That was a lie. The earth was just earth. Why would the king lie to his own daughter? "The earth does not bite, princess," Kobe said bravely, "but it is very thirsty right now. My people are thirsty too." Adora looked at Kobe with wide, worried eyes. She did not know her people were suffering. Later that day, a group of the oldest and wisest men from the village came to the heavy palace gates. They brought empty wooden bowls and fell to their knees in the dust. They begged the guards to let them speak to the king. The king finally came out to the balcony, looking down at them with a cold stare. "Great king," the oldest man pleaded, his voice cracking. "Our crops are dead. Our animals are gone. The children are too weak to cry. Please, open the palace well. Share your water, or Tola will become a graveyard." King Jengo gripped the stone railing of the balcony until his knuckles turned white. "This water in this palace is for the royal family alone," he declared loudly. "If I give it to you, it will run out. Go back to your homes and pray to the sky for rain." The old men wept, holding up their empty bowls, but the king turned his back and walked inside. Kobe watched this from the kitchen door. He felt a hot anger rise in his chest. The king was a cruel, selfish man. The village was dying and the king did not care. Kobe knew he could not just wash animal skins anymore. He needed to find out the truth about the water, the king, and the strange rule about the princess. That night, when everyone in the palace was asleep, Kobe decided to explore. He crept through the dark, silent hallways, holding a small, flickering candle. He wanted to see if he could find a way to the royal well to steal some water for Nala. He walked down a narrow, dusty corridor that looked like it had not been used in years. At the end of the hall, he found a heavy wooden door that was slightly open. Kobe pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was dark and smelled like old paper and dried leaves. He held his candle up and gasped. The walls of the room were covered in giant, colorful paintings. They were old and fading, but Kobe could clearly see the story they told. The first painting showed a much younger King Jengo standing in a dry field holding a tiny, lifeless baby in his arms. The king was crying. The second painting showed the king walking into a dark, scary forest and meeting a giant shadow in the sky that looked like a storm cloud. The final painting showed the storm cloud placing a glowing blue light into the baby's chest. Underneath the painting, written in old letters, were the words, "The sky gives life, but the earth will always take it back." Kobe stared at the wall, his mind racing. The baby in the painting was Princess Adora. "You should not be in here, little boy." Kobe jumped and dropped his candle. Old Binta, the head cook, was standing in the doorway holding a lantern. Her face looked sad and deeply tired. Kobe thought she was going to call the guards and have him thrown in the dungeon, but she just sighed and walked into the room. She looked at the old paintings on the wall. "I see you have found the king's greatest secret," she said softly. Kobe looked at her, his whole body shaking. "Is that the princess?" he asked. Binta nodded slowly. She sat down on an old wooden chair and began to tell Kobe the truth. 10 years ago, Princess Adora was born, but she did not take a breath. She was gone before she even lived. King Jengo was so broken-hearted that he lost his mind. He took the baby to the evil forest and called upon the ancient spirits of the sky. the ones who control the rain and the clouds. The king begged them to bring his daughter back to life. The sky spirits agreed, but deals with spirits always come with a terrible price. The magic in this world demands balance, and the king had messed with the rules of life and death. Old Binta leaned closer to Kobe, her eyes wide in the dim light. The sky spirits put a piece of the rain clouds inside the baby to make her heart beat, Binta whispered. Adora is not fully human, Kobe. She's made of water, magic, and sky. She's a living rain spirit wrapped in human skin. Kobe was amazed and terrified. But why can't she touch the ground? He asked. Binta's face grew very dark. Because the earth is jealous, she explained. The earth knows she does not belong here. The magic that keeps her alive belongs to the sky. If her bare skin ever touches the natural dirt, the thirsty earth will instantly recognize the magic. It will drink her up like a drop of water in the desert. The earth will pull the rain spirit out of her body to feed the soil, and she will disappear forever. Kobe finally understood. The king was not afraid of dirt ruining her feet. He was protecting her from being swallowed by the ground. But Binta wasn't finished. The curse goes deeper, boy. The sky spirits are angry that the king keeps their rain trapped in her body, so they refuse to let it rain on Tola until their magic is returned to the earth. The king's selfish love is the reason our village is dying of thirst. The next day, Kobe noticed that Princess Adora was not in the courtyard. The palace was in a panic. Kobe listened to the guards whispering. The terrible dry heat was finally affecting the princess. Because she was made of rain magic, her body needed moisture to survive. With the air so completely dry and hot, her magic was fading. Servants said her skin was becoming clear, almost like looking through a glass of water, and she was too weak to stand up. She lay in her large bed grieving heavily, looking paler by the minute. The king was pacing the halls like a trapped lion, screaming at his healers to fix her, but the healers could do nothing. They knew she was not suffering from a normal sickness. She was drying out, just like the crops in the fields and the river in the village. Princess Adora was slowly turning to dust. King Jengo realized he had to put moisture back into the air of her room, no matter what it cost. He gave a new, horrifying order to his soldiers, an order that would push the suffering village to its absolute breaking point. The heavy King Jengo's armed guards marched down the hill into the village of Tola. They carried large metal buckets and sharp spears. The king had ordered them to take every single drop of water left in the entire village. They kicked open the doors of small huts, searching for hidden clay pots. They took the dirty puddle water, the water saved for the sick, and even the tiny cups of water mothers had hidden for their dying babies. The villagers cried and begged, but the guards pushed them away with their spears. They carried all the water back up to the palace. There in the courtyards, they built massive fires under giant iron pots. They boiled all the stolen water to create huge clouds of steam. The guards used large fans to blow the steam up into the princess's high tower window, filling her room with moisture to keep her skin wet and her magic alive. The king was stealing the very last breath of life from his people just to buy his daughter a few more days. The sky remained terribly empty and blue. Kobe watched the steam rising into the air, knowing it was made from the tears and stolen life of his friends and family. When Kobe finally went home that evening, the village was completely silent. It was not a peaceful silence, it was the silence of defeat. He rushed into his small hut to check on Nala. His heart stopped. Nala was lying on her thin mat on the floor and she was not moving. Her lips were cracked and bleeding and her skin was burning hot. Kobe shook her gently. "Nala, wake up. I brought you some rice," but Nala could not open her eyes. She let out a tiny, weak sound like a baby bird. Kobe looked around the empty hut. The small cup of water he had saved for her was gone, taken by the king's guards. A hot tear rolled down Kobe's cheek and dropped on the dry, dusty floor. He realized that if he did nothing, Nala would not survive the night. He thought about the old paintings. He thought about the clear, glassy skin of the princess. He thought about the stolen water boiling in the palace. Kobe wiped his eyes and stood up. His hands curled into tight fists. He was just a small boy, but he knew what he had to do. The king had made a selfish choice, but now Kobe was going to make a brave one. Kobe knew that Princess Adora had a good heart. She had spoken kindly to him. She had looked at the ground with wonder, not fear. Kobe believed that if she truly understood that her life was causing little girls like Nala to die, she would not want to stay trapped in that tower. The king had lied to her for her whole life, keeping her totally blind to the suffering outside her window. Kobe decided he was going to sneak into her room and tell her everything. He would tell her about the evil forest, the sky spirits, and the terrible curse. It was a highly dangerous plan. If the guards caught him, King Jengo would surely throw him in the dungeon or worse. But Kobe looked at his dying sister and knew he had no other choice. He waited until the moon was high in the sky and the village was completely pitch black. He crept out of his hut and ran silently up the steep hill toward the towering stone walls of the royal palace. He was small and fast, moving like a little shadow in the night. Getting inside the palace at night was much harder. The guards were everywhere, holding bright torches that cast long, scary shadows. Kobe knew he could not use the main doors. Instead, he went to the back of the palace, where the tall stone wall met the side of the princess's high tower. Thick green ivy vines grew up the side of the tower, reaching all the way to her balcony. Kobe took a deep breath, grabbed the thickest vine and began to climb. The rough stone scraped his knees and his arms ached with every pull. The ground moved further and further away. If he fell now, he would not survive. He climbed higher and higher, passing the windows of the sleeping servants. Finally, he reached the smooth stone ledge of the princess's balcony. He pulled himself up and rolled over the edge, lying flat on his back to catch his breath. The glass doors to her room were slightly open to let the steam in. Kobe crept forward and peeked inside. The room was thick with warm, white steam. It felt like being inside a cloud. In the center of the room, Princess Adora sat on her large bed. She looked incredibly weak. Her skin was glowing with a faint, magical blue light, and her hands looked almost entirely clear like melting ice. Kobe stepped through the doors. "Princess," he whispered. Adora gasped and pulled her blankets up. "You, the boy from the courtyard. How did you get up here? If my father finds you, he will hurt you." Kobe stepped closer, his face very serious. "I don't care about your father right now," Kobe said firmly. "I care about my sister. She is dying. Everyone in the village is dying, and it is because of you." Adora looked shocked and hurt. "Because of me, I have done nothing, I am just sick." Kobe shook his head. "You are not sick, Adora, you are cursed." Taking a deep breath, Kobe told her the whole story. He told her about the dead baby, the sky spirits, the magic rain inside her chest, and how her father stole all the village's water to make steam for her. He told her about Nala, about the mothers crying over their dying babies, about the old men begging at the palace gates. Adora listened to Kobe's story in total silence. As he spoke about the dying animals, the stolen water and little Nala, big, shiny tears began to roll down her cheeks. But her tears were not like normal human tears. They were perfectly clear drops of pure, fresh water that smelled like a spring morning. When they hit her silk blankets, they sizzled with magic. "My whole life is a lie," Adora whispered, looking at her glowing, watery hands. "My father kept me alive, but he is killing everyone else to do it. I am stealing the rain." Kobe nodded sadly. "The sky spirits will not let it rain until the magic inside you is returned to the earth." Adora looked out the open balcony doors. Below, the village of Tola was dark, dry and silent. She thought about all the children suffering in the heat. She looked at Kobe, a brave little boy risking his life for his sister. Adora's face changed. The sadness disappeared, replaced by a look of deep strength and peace. "I always wondered why I felt a pulling in my chest when I looked at the dirt. It was the earth calling me home. It is time for me to go." Suddenly, the heavy wooden doors to the bedroom burst open. King Jengo stood there, wearing his sleeping robes, holding a sharp sword. He had heard voices. When he saw Kobe standing near his daughter, his eyes widened with madness. "Get away from her!" the king screamed, raising his sword. "Guards, guards!" Kobe froze in terror, but Princess Adora stood up. She did not wear her heavy wooden shoes. Her bare, glowing feet rested on the soft animal skins. "Stop, father," Adora commanded. Her voice was no longer soft. It echoed with the sound of a roaring river. The king stopped, looking at her in shock. "Adora, what are you doing? Sit down, you are weak." The king dropped his sword and ran toward her, but Adora stepped backward, moving closer to the open balcony doors. "You made a bad deal, father," she said, her voice full of sorrow. "You cheated death, and you made our people pay the price. I love you for wanting to save me, but I cannot let innocent children die so I can live in a cage." She turned her back to the king and stepped out onto the cold stone of the balcony. "No!" the king shrieked, diving forward, but he was too late. Princess Adora looked back at Kobe and gave him a beautiful, thankful smile. Then, she stepped off the edge of the stone balcony. She did not fall far. As soon as her bare feet touched the dry, dusty earth of the royal garden below, a massive, blinding flash of blue light exploded into the night sky. The ground shook violently. Kobe covered his eyes. There was a loud, booming sound, like a mountain cracking open. When Kobe opened his eyes, Adora was gone. In her place, a giant pillar of pure, sparkling water shot up from the ground, reaching high into the clouds. Instantly, the empty sky filled with thick, heavy, dark rain clouds. Thunder roared loudly, and then the rain began to fall. It was not a small shower. It was a heavy, glorious, soaking rain. Down in the village, people ran out of their huts, laughing and crying as the water washed over them. Nala awoke, drinking the sweet water falling on her face. The dry river filled up, and the earth drank deeply. Princess Adora had returned the magic to the earth, sacrificing herself to save her people. Kobe stood on the balcony, letting the rain wash over him. He looked down at the spot where the princess had touched the ground. The pillar of water was slowly sinking back into the earth, feeding the thirsty soil. Where Adora had stood, beautiful green grass began to sprout, growing impossibly fast in the magical rain. King Jengo fell to his knees on the balcony, weeping. He had tried to cheat death and keep his daughter alive, but in doing so, he had turned her life into a prison and his kingdom into a wasteland. Now she was gone, but she had saved everyone he had condemned. The old cook Binta appeared in the doorway of the princess's room. She placed a gentle hand on the king's shoulder. "She was free, your majesty," Binta said softly. For the first time in her life she felt the earth, and she chose to give herself to save others. That is the mark of a true princess. The king could not speak. He could only watch the rain fall and know that his daughter had been braver than he ever was. Kobe climbed down from the tower and ran through the pouring rain back to his village. He burst into his small hut and found Nala sitting up, her eyes bright and clear. She was holding a clay bowl out the door, catching the fresh rainwater. "Kobe," she cried, "look, it's raining. We're saved." Kobe hugged his sister tight, tears mixing with the rain on his face. In the days that followed, Tola came back to life. The rain fell for 3 days and 3 nights, gentle and steady. The river filled with clear, rushing water. The fields turned green. The animals grew strong. The children laughed and played in the puddles. King Jengo opened the palace wells to everyone and shared the remaining food stores. He was a broken man, but he tried to make amends for his selfishness. He ordered that a statue be built in the center of the village, a beautiful stone carving of Princess Adora with her bare feet touching the ground and her arms raised to the sky. Water flowed from her hands into a fountain that never ran dry, a reminder of her sacrifice. Kobe visited the statue every day. He would sit beside the fountain and remember the sad princess who had never been allowed to play in the dirt, who had given her life so that other children could live and grow. Binta told Kobe that on certain nights when the rain fell softly, you could see a faint blue glow in the drops, and if you listened very carefully, you could hear a girl's laughter mixed with the sound of the water. It was Princess Adora, finally free, dancing in the rain she had always been meant to be. The villagers learned a hard lesson. Some things in life are not meant to be controlled. Love is not about holding on so tightly that you crush what you cherish. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go, even when it breaks your heart. King Jengo lived the rest of his days quietly, visiting his daughter's statue every morning and every evening. He would kneel in the water of the fountain and whisper apologies to the sky. He never forgave himself for what his fear and selfishness had cost, but he spent his remaining years making sure that no child in Tola ever went hungry or thirsty again. Kobe grew up strong and healthy. He became a leader in the village, always reminding people to share what they had and to never take the rain for granted. He told the story of Princess Adora to every generation, so they would remember the girl made of rain, who loved her people more than she loved her own life. And every year, on the anniversary of the night she touched the ground, the village held a festival. They would dance in the rain, splash in the puddles, and celebrate the gift of water. Children would run barefoot through the mud, feeling the earth between their toes, free and alive. Because Princess Adora had taught them that life is not about being protected from every danger. It is about being free to touch the ground, to feel the rain, to live fully even if that life is short. She had been trapped in a golden cage, but she chose to break free and become what she was always meant to be, the rain that gives life to all. So what would you have done? If you were Princess Adora, would you have stayed safe in your tower, or would you have touched the ground to save the dying village? What if you were King Jengo? Would you have let your child go, or would you have done anything to keep them alive, even if it meant others would suffer? These are not easy questions, and that is why this story matters. It reminds us that every choice has a cost, and sometimes the hardest choice is the right one.